I've now played 4.5 hours of Last Vanguard, and the only reason that I have played 4.5 hours of Last Vanguard is because I went over the 2-hour refund mark without realising it and figured, what the hell, I may as well try and hope and see that it gets better. It has not. This was a game that I backed on Kickstarter. I think I vaguely recall it had 2 Kickstarters and neither of them were successful. With the game in its current state, I'm going to say something really harsh here, I am not surprised. Last Vanguard is one of the most dull, frustrating and difficult to control video games that I have played this year in its early access state, and I'm saying this with the hope that any kind of feedback will be helpful, negative as this is very likely to be. This is not a scripted video and I may have to record it in bits, but here we go. First of all, some praise. I really like the look of this game. When it is still and the camera is not moving and you have an image like the one that we've got here, it's great. It looks washed out, war-torn, dystopian, as you would expect for the theme. There is an issue with the aesthetic in the sense that a lot of the enemies are also very grey and war-torn and washed out and have a little bit of a tendency in places to get lost in the background. But I like the aesthetic. The camera movement is awful. It is juddery, it is poorly paced. I think there is the typical 50 Hz Unity physics issue going on here in terms of camera movements. It's juddery, it's not good. There is an overabundance in many places of screen shake. Now, don't get me wrong, they tend to be in places where bombardments and shelling is going on, things that are quite common in war. And thematically and tonally, that's very appropriate. But from a gameplay perspective, it makes it incredibly difficult for me to focus on what is going on unless I stare directly at the character, in which case there's only so much just focused on that I can get in my peripheral vision. And that might sound weird because, you know, your peripheral vision is quite wide. But with the amount of screen shake going on, having to really narrow your focus onto your main character isn't great for avoiding enemy bullets and so on and so forth. So let's talk combat. Combat is basic. I don't know whether I have missed something at this point, and I'll explain why I may have missed something at this point in a second. But I've got multiple guns now at this point. Got some 3-star ones, some 2-star ones. No, I've got some 1-star ones, 2-star ones, 3-star ones. They all do absolutely piddling damage. The highest, in fact, is it this one that I'm using? Yeah, it is. It's this one. This is it's essentially a sniper rifle, and this does 4 damage a shot. So even on basic enemies, they're taking 2 hits usually. 1 in certain cases. And none of them are fun to use. You know, I have tried every single gun and not a single one feels fun to use. Yeah, we've got your fast rate of fire one, which is imprecise. You've got an improved version of the charge shot, the ordinary rifle, which I'm using, slow rate of fire but high damage bounty ammo. The Coil-Matic 400 is vaguely interesting in the sense that you've got to get close to an enemy and it just locks onto them and blasts them with lightning. But the damage on all of these things is pitiful. I haven't actually tried the ball launcher or the regular shotgun because the shotgun obviously has to be incredibly close. And you don't really want to do that in a game like this. So shooting the guns doesn't feel very good. The rate of fire is slow. There's a reload mechanic for realism reasons, I don't know. Everything takes really long to kill. And the bosses are so busy. Every boss, don't get me wrong, all of the bosses that I've fought have got a lovely variety of moves. But they throw out so many things at the same time. You can have ads and traps and bombs and bullets all on screen at once. And you'll notice that I've still only got 3 health 4.5 hours in. I don't know whether there is a way of getting more health. I don't know if there's a way of getting a better heal. But as it is, that's what I've been stuck with. So I used cheats because I was having no fun whatsoever. I turned cheat engine on, I fixed my health, and that's how I've played for the last 2 hours, just because I wanted to see some more of the game in the vain hope that it would get better, but it has not. In that time, I have acquired a single thing that you could argue is a Metroidvania power, and I can't even remember which button I need to press to actually use it. It's this, the reconnaissance bots. The reconnaissance bot controls like dog shit. You have to hold the jump button to make it go up, and it's got this horrendous amount of momentum on it. I stopped pressing the button 2 seconds ago. It just controls really, really badly. And the irony is that the whole point of it is that it's capable of traversing narrow spaces. So you have to try and get it into really narrow corridors so that it can go up, and it can zap switches, but it just controls so badly. It just feels awful. It feels awful. Let's take a look at the map. I've already spoke about the lack of a dedicated map button, the lack of custom markers, and so on and so forth. But these areas, they're just not fun to explore. This is barely a Metroidvania. There were going to be some people that like this because it is quite non-linear. There seem to be a lot of different directions you can go off in. But the trouble with that is that there's nothing interesting in terms of Metroidvania powers to find because they've had to keep it so open. And not only are there no Metroidvania powers to find, as I said, this drone is the first thing that I could realistically consider. Yeah, we got the heal, which we got right at the start. We've got this drone, and I've got the bullet dissipator, which I can use to just disintegrate enemy bullets. But it uses the energy, and the only way that you can get energy back is by hitting enemies with this cable, this whip thing. It does pitiful damage, and fights against bosses take so long that it's just boring. It's just really, really boring. I don't think I have found a boss yet that couldn't have its health cut in half. That's how dull and how long the bosses take to fight. So we've got a really nice looking world, which is really dull to explore because there's nothing to find. We've got these gadgets, but most of these have been bought from shops. I think 2 of them were actually found out and about in the world. What I have found a few of is helmets. I bought, again, a handful of these from a shop, but most of these I found out and about in the world. The problem is, they're helmets, and you can only wear one, so why would I wear anything except the alerts you to nearby secrets? You know, if you could swap them at will, that would be good, but you can't. You have to go back to this thing. Likewise, the guns. If you could swap them at will for the situations that you find yourself in, that'd be good. But no, you've got to go back to this. Everything revolves around these armament stations. So you are constantly having to go back to them. And you know what the map doesn't do? It doesn't mark them on. You know, it marks campsites on, where you can save your game, but it doesn't mark the armament stations. Yeah, there is an armament station next to each campsite, but it's just no. So yeah, I've just kind of ponderously made my way through each of these areas. The only things that I have found are those treasure chests. I've found 14 of those little statue things. I've no idea what they are for. I've defeated a couple of things, again, using cheats because the bosses are ridiculous in terms of how dull they are to fight because of how little health we've got. You know, they fill the screen with stuff. And don't get me wrong, I am fully expecting people to say this is a skill issue. And in this particular case, absolutely, it is a skill issue. If patience was a skill. Kind of is. I'm a very patient person. You know, I'm a teacher. I work with teenagers. I have to be patient. I am not this patient. Because the bosses take so long to kill. And it is so easy to take 3 points of damage. Well, 4 points of damage because you can get a single heal. Now, if there was some way of upgrading the amount of damage this whip did, that'd be interesting. You know, that'd seem like it's worth using. But as it is, if you're not firing your weapon, things are taking longer and longer and longer and longer and longer and longer to kill. So in terms of its systems, what we've got here is interesting. What we've got here is interesting. What we've got here is interesting, with the caveat that most of these require energy and thus you've got to whip things. What we've got here is fine. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pages worth of vaguely interesting things, all of which rely on you coming back to one of these to change your mind and to reload outs. And that slows down the pace dramatically. Adds to that the fact that enemies obviously take off one of your little health pips each time they hit you, and have not found any way of upgrading that. Means that you're probably going to be dying quite a lot unless you play incredibly slowly and incredibly cautiously. And that just, for me, isn't fun. For some people, it's going to be great. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this is going to be a terrible game for all people. It's not. Some people are going to love the slow, methodical, monotonous pace of this. And I kind of get that in terms of the war, you know, you're having to be cautious and so on and so forth. But in a year where we've had Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, and Void Rorts and Rebel Transmute. That was this year? I think that was this year. Don't know. It doesn't matter. We've had so many more interesting games than this year. But if you are looking for a slower paced, more methodical Metroidvania, this might be for you. But as I said, it is barely a Metroidvania. In fact, and this is probably going to sound again quite harsh, I think Tales of Kenzera Zao is more of a Metroidvania than Last Vanguard. And that game was barely a Metroidvania. This just feels like a collection of rooms with very little in to find. There's just nothing there. It's just this slow, dull combat and stiff controls. Oh, and the occasional kind of lore piece, which haven't really done anything to kind of involve me or excite me about this world. Oh, here's one of the drone tunnels. Let's see if I can. There we go. So that's navigating the drone. If it was twice more precise and maybe a little bit faster, that could be a vaguely entertaining mechanic. But as it is, that is the only mechanic that I have found in the last 3 hours, essentially. So yeah, I am very disappointed with this. And in terms of what would I do, you know, if I was creating this game, how would I change things? First of all, I'd have guns and gadgets. In fact, I'd have all of these swappable out in the field. You know, is it less realistic than going back to an armory station like this and swapping your gear out? Yes, absolutely it is less realistic. Is it more fun gameplay? Yes. Yes, it is. Being able to change your gun and adapt to the enemies and the situation would feel better, assuming there was actually really any need or feel to doing so, because the guns all feel pretty similar. Likewise, being able to change what gadgets you've got equipped depending on the enemies you're facing would be so much more fun if you could just do it on the fly. But you can't. I've only got 3 abilities right now. Obviously the control mapping for them isn't right. There's apparently 7 more abilities and 2 potential things at the bottom that are broken. I don't know why those are broken. Not a clue. Oh, defeating the commanders increases our health and energy. Well, I haven't found any of those yet. Yeah, I'd make the guns more interesting. I'd either up the damage on the guns or I'd lower the health on the enemies. It's a grenade launcher style thing. As I said, I hadn't tried that. And oh, that's got a really slow rate of fire. I don't know. I want to like this because of the visuals, but everything else in the game, it's like The map is so basic. The systems are so slow and so... Huh. There's a shotgun jump. Is that specifically for the shotgun? Yeah, looks like it's specifically for the shotgun. Yeah, I don't know. There's just so much that needs doing to turn this into, for me, an engaging and entertaining experience. I'm going to keep on playing more because I may as well, at this point, I may as well see what are the different abilities, and maybe later on I will have some more positive things to say. But as of right now, I would avoid spending any money on Last Vanguard, because unless the things that I've spoken about here sound entertaining to you, unless you are blessed with the patience of Job, essentially, I think you are going to find this frustrating and, more importantly, just really dull. There's no power fantasy here, which is fine. It's a game about war, but I don't know. Maybe I am missing something. So yeah, that's my feedback on Last Vanguard. I had a really positive first episode, and it's just kind of gone downhill and downhill and downhill from there. Thank you very much for watching, folks. I'm going to keep on playing this anyway, but I just haven't got the energy to talk people through it. I think 20 odd minutes of me basically being mean, and I appreciate that, I've said a lot of negative things, but unfortunately there's not a huge amount I can say in terms of positivity here. The way the dash and the climb interacts just doesn't work. The ledge grabbing is basic but okay. I don't know why he does a little twirl in the middle of his double jump animation, because that doesn't seem very soldiery. Yeah. Also, there's no recoil or anything on any of these guns. I assume the guns are separate to his sprites. At least he's got a little reload animation. So yes, my apologies to whoever may actually watch this if you were expecting something a little bit more on the positive side, but unfortunately The Last Vanguard is a very rough product right now, which means that it was a good choice to put it in early access. There's only 2 devs working on this. They've been working on it for 5 years. I think they've got some work ahead of them. For me, personally, I think there's a long road ahead to turn this into a product that can compete with other things on the market. The Metroidvania genre, especially indie Metroidvanias, which is basically most of them, is incredibly saturated. And in terms of what does this game offer that is unique, I'm drawing a blank. Thank you for watching, folks. Apologies for the somewhat harsh nature of the feedback, but I'd like to see this game turn into something that is actually fun and successful, and at the moment I can't see it in the product that I've been playing for 4.5 hours. Stay safe, folks. Stay fabulous. Cheerio. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not click the like button and consider subscribing. Remember, you can ring the bell notification icon to get notified when new videos go live. And until next time, cheerio.